sports marketing program at our respective schools, and we'll tell you a little bit about our background as well. But first, we want to take you through a deck that we prepare, and this is what we use when we go to try to sign a new client or an institution. We represent institutions just like Ari Gold and Entourage represents agents or actors, things like that. So this will just give you a little background of the collegiate licensing industry in our company. The licensed marketplace is made up of a bunch of different things. Think Disney and Harley Davidson and John Deere, things of that nature. And then obviously the professional leagues, Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, and then college sports. And all of that combined adds up to a $93 billion sales industry. Of the $93 billion, $20 billion or so makes up the sports licensed product industry, and then our little piece of the pie, we represent about a quarter here at $4.6 billion. Now that's retail sales, and how we make money is off of royalties that are charged and paid on the products that are sold in the marketplace. Of that $4.6 billion, the majority of the product is apparel, so your hats and your t-shirts and fleece, and then non-apparel, anything from video games to propane tank covers to birdhouses and anything in between. So it's kind of a wild world, so we can go through that as well. Our company is made up of about 90 to 100 staff members. It fluctuates any given week. We represent around 200 collegiate institutions, 150 of which are actual colleges. In my world, I represent about 30 bowl games, the NCAA and their championship events, including the Final Four, the College World Series. Represent 10 conferences, including the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC, and then also the Heisman Trophy and a couple of historically black college and university classics, the Bayou Classic and the Florida Classic, which are both played this month. We manage the licensing process of roughly 3,000 licensees. Sounds daunting, but we have the largest staff in the marketplace, so the 90 to 100 people can roll through 3,000 licensees pretty quickly. Of that, there's 300 product categories in apparel and non-apparel, and then part of our job every day is the quality control of the products you see out in the marketplace, so making sure that university names are spelled correctly, make sure that logos are correct, and through that quality control process, we have a system called My ICLC. It's a terrible name, but a cool system. And we review about 500,000 pieces of artwork every year, which is crazy. I would say maybe 25% of that is actually produced and put into the marketplace. So we do a lot of work that doesn't come to fruition just to make sure that things are done correctly. And then the last point is in relation, to the retailers, we have a staff that is dedicated solely to building relationships with retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods, JCPenney, Hibbett's, and things like that, just so we're not going in blind and trying to sell one or two colleges. We can take all of the colleges and all of the collegiate properties that we represent and tell a complete story at a retailer, and that helps us when we're going up against the Disneys and the other professional leagues that we're in competition with. We have clients in all but 6 states. We don't represent anybody in the Dakotas, Iowa, Maine, New Hampshire, Hawaii. Unfortunately, not Hawaii, but this represents all of the major media markets, in California, in the Midwest, in the Southeast, and obviously in New York. So we have a pretty broad reach. Our competition is made up of, comes from a different few places. There are licensing agencies that are similar to us. They're much smaller. They represent much smaller institutions. Like LRG, it's a group out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Strategic Marketing Affiliates is a company out of Indianapolis. They represent probably the most institutions, but they're all the mid-majors, if you will. And then for Motto Partners, which is kind of a tough one, it's made up of 3 or 4 guys that I know very well. They were vice presidents within our company, and they left through a series of acquisitions at our company and laid low for a couple of years, and they just now have come back on the scene. And they have 3 properties, which are actually major properties: University of Miami, University of Kentucky, and most recently the University of Georgia, which is tough for a Georgia grad to take, not being able to work for the company that represents the school that you graduated from. But they're friends and people that we know very well, but that's just part of the world we live in. I mean, competition comes from a bunch of different places. The second place that it comes from is from broadcasters, CBS and ESPN. They go in and spend billions of dollars on showing the games that you watch every weekend and even during the week. And part of that, they try to wrap up licensing rights in their deals. So they'll add it as kind of the side at the very end. Hey, we're going to pay you X number of billions of dollars to show every SEC football game. By the way, we want to have all the rights to the product that's in the marketplace too, so they can tell their story and create the synergies that you see on screen on the weekend, and take that so you're seeing it at retail as well. And then the last two is interesting. Really, it's the independent programs that we don't represent that have taken this last tack, which is they have signed agreements with licensees who have come in and bought them exclusive rights in certain categories. So, for instance, at Ohio State, this company, J America, came in and said, we're going to guarantee you a certain number, what was it? $100 million to be the only company besides Nike that can produce an Ohio State product. J America is not a very good company. I hope nobody's related to them. I mean, the quality is pretty low on the product, but it's not a deal that we would have recommended. But money talks in our industry, and Ohio State now works with these two companies. That's it. So
produce everything that someone can wear. That's it. You just have kind of two options.
Wow. And I kind of mentioned that our colleges are not in competition with each other, despite all the rivalries on field. Georgia product is not going against Alabama product in the marketplace. College is going against pro product and Disney and Scooby-Doo, and then also these lifestyle brands, Nautica, DC, and Abercrombie. That's kind of a misnomer in the letter, but I think that the colleges have the same rivalries in the marketplace as they do in the field, and that's not the case. So this is the battle that we wage every day, is making sure that we're positioning our partners to sell the most product in direct competition with these folks here. So with that, I'm going to let Katie go through kind of what drives our business. Ready?
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about our clients, the three kind of big things that we market and do for them revolve around these three pillars. So we're in the market of brand protection. We want to protect their brand from all those companies that are not licensed. So our legal team is phenomenal, and they do everything from, take cases, work on cases and up to the point of getting them to court. And then we have outside counsel that will do that. We've got a team that, pretty much surfs the internet all day and takes down a lot of unlicensed things, whether it be on Etsy, Facebook, Twitter, Teespring is a big one now. eBay, oh yeah, et cetera, to doing auditing, going in and making sure a company is reporting exactly what they should be on the products that they sold. And then corporate responsibility is a big one that's popped up, just making sure that a company is like, a J America or a Nike, is disclosing the factories that they're producing product in and ensuring that those factories and stuff are up to code. It's not something that we necessarily go in and do the corporate responsibility, but we're ensuring that everything is reported correctly. That is a big deal on several large college campuses, and something that continues to be an issue.
Yeah, to the point where they are canceling licenses for very large companies.
Yes.
They'll say, hey, we understand you're paying us, $6 to $10 million a year, but you can't keep your workers safe in Bangladesh from fires, or in China, you're underpaying, you're not paying a living wage. So that's all falls under my corporate responsibility.
Yep. The second pillar that we really work on is brand management. And that's the day-to-day, making sure that companies are paying what they're supposed to be paying on the product, and that money goes back to the schools. It's all, I like to consider the brand management all the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's the data we're collecting and the analysis we're doing to get that back to the schools. everything from, ensuring our systems are functioning so that we can go in and use them, but also the schools log in, and that's how they review artwork submitted by all of their licensees/manufacturers. And then lastly, and this is the one that gets me the most excited because you get to see it in person, is the brand development. So that's taking, and pitching to retailers, hey, we'd really love for you to expand your college product assortment. So whether that be, expanded in a few doors, maybe regionally, so somebody like an academy who is more of a southeast, kind of southern retailer.
What's the big sporting goods store in town? Is it Hibbett, or is it an academy?
Probably
It is.
I wouldn't call that big, but it's the only one, right?
It's one only. The closest academy or Dick's is probably Noonan or Douglasville.
Villa Rica has an academy.
Do they?
And
So whether it's going to, academy corporate offices or Hibbett corporate offices and say, hey, look, we know that you're carrying these schools in these doors. Guess what? You may do better carrying, less of the pros maybe in that area and bringing in more college. And if you agree to do that, we can even recommend what colleges to bring in.
So right now, we're killing the Atlanta market, saying Falcons are terrible. You guys sell more Georgia product, more Georgia Tech product, so.
And just full disclosure, I work with our schools that are in the Midwest, so I've got all of our Big Ten conference institutions in Notre Dame. So for me, Academy is not a big retailer, but it's the Dick's, it's the JCPenney's, it's the Kohl's, it's the Shields department stores. Not sure if you all have ever heard of that, but if you ever go to the Midwest and you see a Shields department store, go in it. It's pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of a...
It's like a Bass Pro Shop
Yeah.
and Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah, it's pretty
So,
cool.
and
So anyway, that we're kind of on the brand development side, we're working with retailers. We're also working on the marketing side, what kind of promotions can we bring to the table? Anything to kind of help position the school well in the retail market and the consumers. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the services that we offer. It can be, as I said, everything from, licensing administration, so that's all the paperwork and fun stuff on the back end, to what else? Public relations. We've been known to do press releases on behalf of schools when they do launch new logos, or they're going to a bowl game and that there's going to be teams like Olin and I out there trying to catch the guys that aren't licensed. So we've got a big team here in Atlanta, or there in Atlanta. Just kind of covers the departments that we have. Oh, and this is kind of the nice layout of our staff. We've got soon to be 3 attorneys. One is about to start. Board of staff, corporate responsibility, just kind of our staff breakdown. All right, this is the fun part. This is where you're going to learn actually how all this works and why you should buy officially licensed product. It's a little blurry, but that's okay. Don't be simple. This is a simple version. So a licensor is someone who owns a mark. So in this case, my lovely shirt here, Notre Dame is the licensor. They own this trademark. They own Fighting Irish. That's kind of how, when we say licensor, university, it's the trademark owner. Licensee, another word for manufacturer. So the shirt on the screen here, that would be Nike. And then obviously a retailer. You all know what retailers are. And then consumers. So how schools get paid is, we'll start with the Nike here, sells a shirt to Dick's Sporting Goods, and they'll sell it, again, $12.50. This is gonna make you sick too, when you go shop now and you see what you paid for a shirt. Know that the retailer bought that for far less than what you paid for it, so, sorry,
Yeah.
it's depressing.
Yeah, so Dick's Sporting Goods, for example, would buy the shirt for $12.50, and then they would sell it to you for $35.
Right, that's,
It's-
sucks, doesn't it?
Is
Now
that
we know
typically
that.
what it is? It's 100% the markup price? or-
It's, the average is 50%.
Average
I
is
mean,
50%.
if we were to say a fair wholesale price, it's usually 50% of retail. At least. In some cases, it's much lower. In some cases, because we have all these licensees, they develop this competition with each other, and somebody's gonna go in and say, I'm gonna give you everything for $5. And they're undercutting the price. So what happens there is you get a low quality shirt, might, if you go drop it in water or whatever, it might come apart at the seams. But again, they're buying for $5, but Dick's doesn't care what they offer, they're still, hey, we're selling t-shirts for 35, so that goes from 50 to 100 in some cases, you get 250%, which is absolutely ludicrous.
Right. Christmas shopping's not the same. I like it saves so much more. But anyway, getting back to kind of how the school gets paid. The licensee sells to a retailer. The licensee then is responsible for paying the trademark owners, the school, a royalty rate. And that royalty rate can range anywhere from
10 to 25%.
yeah, 8, 10, 12, 15,
Yeah.
20. The school sets it, so that's how it goes. But they receive a royalty based on the wholesale price. That's why that wholesale price is kind of important. As Olin alluded to, you know, we prefer to work with partners who, you know, keep the quality of their garments high and kind of keep prices like that. You don't necessarily want to work with an undercutter like that. It's likely that the product quality is not
Yeah.
so fabulous.
And kind of interject, one of the things that we have to be careful about, because we're a clearinghouse or a watchdog, basically, making sure everybody plays nice in the sandbox together. We cannot play around with pricing, so we're not in the price setting game. That's all done based on market and what the licensee and the retailers feel like the market can bear. So we can't go to a licensee and say, hey, you're selling t-shirts for $5, you can't do that. We just try to find creative ways to urge institutions to lean on them to bring their prices up. So it's a gray area that we, a balancing act that we have to live every day. You know, like you said, so the $12.50, I mean, it does make you sick at the same time. That's kind of what that's what pays our bills.
It does. I don't mind paying
Yeah.
$30 for a shirt that I know is gonna last me 20 years,
Right.
maybe 10, as opposed to paying, you know, getting a shirt for $7 and I know this brand, I know this is probably not gonna be the greatest, but, okay. So this is kind of a snapshot of our top institutions. These are the institutions that earn the most royalty. They generated the most royalties last fiscal year. So just so you know, our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30. So these would be our rankings for last year. Let me go back to that.
There you go.
In looking at the list, just out of curiosity, are there any surprises to any of you?
Penn State is not there, that's surprising.
They're 18.
It's about 18.
Guess where they were last year before all that?
4 or 5?
10.
They're 10, but I mean, it's, you know,
They're one of mine,
a drop
so
from
I'm
10
well
to 18
aware.
is colossal, so,
No, it is, but they're getting there.
yeah, they're coming back.
Ohio State have their own license.
They do, yeah, so, well, they handle theirs independently, so.
Yeah, so these are just the schools that we
we
represent.
rep-
But
Typically Ohio State is up there, they
They
would
do top
mirror, yeah.
So do you all sell more football apparel or basketball apparel, or it just depends on the school?
It does depend on the school, in the time of year, obviously fall, I mean, you can look at our top institutions and you can see football is a big driver for these institutions. So obviously, back to school, holiday, first half of our fiscal year, so July through December, those are big. Those can arguably set the tone for the school for the rest of the year. Obviously, basketball is gonna be huge at North Carolina, or even, you know, Michigan has had a good run at basketball lately. Still, having working with that school, I know it's football that drives them. So it just kind of depends. Obviously, Duke, you know, basketball's the driver.
But those
it
figures
is
are
kind of
basketball, are all the sports combined, right?
yeah, it's not really sports, there's always a freshman class, right, that comes in and buys a shirt. So, I mean, we represent
So it's the
every
institution.
institution. I mean, there's always going to be somebody buying the product at these different institutions, but like you said, football's the driver. How I measure it is with the football national champions programs that I manage, when I work with her group. There's a much larger jump when a school wins a football championship than when they win a basketball championship. And there's no better example of that when Florida, you know, won every basketball and football championship for 3 years. So, do you have a question?
That's what I was about to ask, if like championships, y'all see a big spike in like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the FedEx Cup in golf. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but if you get to the last tournament, they play at East Lake in Atlanta. If you're in the top, you know, 6 or 7, I think it is, and you win the championship, you automatically win the $1 million or the $5 million they get right